The American Revolution. This is an informational video to get you prepared for your next module, which is going to be all about the American Revolution. Now you might wonder, what is a revolution? Well, a revolution is when the people overthrow or get rid of their government, and the government, of course, is the people who are in charge of the country. So when there is a revolution, the people decide that the people in charge are no longer the people that they want to be in charge, so they overthrow their government. Another word that you'll hear a lot of is colony. So you might ask yourself, what is a colony? Well, a colony is an area of land that is controlled by a country that is far away. The colonies don't have the same rights as the ruling country. And here on the map you see the map of the United States and the original 13 colonies that made up the United States when they declared independence. You can see Maryland on the map. It's one of the red states. It was one of the original 13 colonies. Another word that you will hear a lot is the word colonists. Now, who were the colonists? Well, colonists were the people that lived in the colony. And when people first arrived in what is now America, they came from Europe, mostly from England. Because they were mostly English, the king declared the area for himself, and the people who lived there were called the colonists. Now, another good question to ask is, why was there an American Revolution? And that's what this whole module is going to be about, but I'll help you start thinking about that. In the American Revolution, the colonists living in what would become America were controlled by the king in Great Britain, or England, even though he was all the way across the ocean. Some of the colonists started getting upset with the King of England because he was making them pay taxes on all sorts of things, like their land, stamps, and even the tea. At the same time they were paying taxes, they had no control or representation over what was happening in England. And so many of the colonists decided that they wanted to become their own country, America, free from the king's rule in England. The king didn't want to give up his power over the colonists.
It all started back in 1607 with the first successful English settlement, Jamestown, Virginia, soon followed by Plymouth, Massachusetts. Over the next 130 years, cities developed, and in 1754, the entire East Coast was established as the 13 British colonies. The British were not the only ones establishing colonies. The French were starting their own colonies in the area now known as Canada. Then, the French and British started getting into arguments over territory. And then, from 1756 to 1763, the French and the Indians fought against the British and the colonists in the French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War. The colonists and the British won the war. To make it official, the British and the French signed the Treaty of Paris in 1763. Not only did the treaty end the war, but it also granted the British control of the territory from the Mississippi River to the Appalachian Mountains. But the war left the British with a bunch of debt, so they taxed the American colonists a lot. And then, in 1765, they passed the Stamp Act, and all important papers and documents needed to be produced in Great Britain and have a special stamp, and the American colonists had to pay for this too. Even with new territory, colonists were very angry that the British were robbing them of their hard earnings by making them pay unreasonable taxes on things like tea and postage. And there was nothing they could do about it because they didn't even have any representation in the British Parliament. They had had enough, so they decided to stop paying taxes completely. But they were just getting started. In 1773, 3 British ships delivering tea from the East India Tea Company were ambushed by colonists disguised as American Indians. They dumped all the tea into the harbor. This act of aggression went down in history as the Boston Tea Party. The British were steamed and started assembling troops to move against the American colonists. Paul Revere, a silversmith from Boston, received this top-secret information and jumped on his horse, warning, "The British are coming, the British are coming." The next morning, on April 19, 1775, the first attacks from the colonists against the British happened in Lexington, Massachusetts, with the shot heard around the world. This marked the start of the American Revolutionary War.
Okay, now that you've watched that short video that sort of explains why the American Revolution occurred, we're going to look at some important pictures and documents that you'll also see when the module begins on Monday. And you're going to be doing a gallery walk of these pictures, so I just kind of want to prepare you to know what it is that you'll be looking at when you see those pictures in your classroom. Okay, here we see a picture of a battle, and if you can look down near the bottom, we will see there are some words on this picture. It says, "The massacre perpetrated in King Street, Boston on March 5th, 1770, in which Messrs. Sam Gray, Sam Maverick, James Caldwell, Crispus Attucks, Patrick Carr were killed, 6 others wounded, 2 of them mortally." Mortally means that they were wounded and soon died afterwards. So I was correct in that this does show a battle. You might be wondering, who is fighting, why are they fighting? Take some time right now to think of some other questions, and remember that you'll see this poster later during the gallery walk in your classroom. This next poster that you see, a picture of a man, and at the top it says, "The just man shall be in eternal remembrance." The brave, and then below it says, "The brave soldier of the Revolutionary War, 1770, Crispus Attucks." So you heard that name on the last poster. This gentleman was actually the first person, he's considered the first person to have died in the American Revolution. He was a former slave, though at the time of his death he was a free man, and he was helping to fight this battle against the British. Okay, in this poster you see some people cheering on the dock, you see some people on boats, and at the bottom it says, "The destruction of tea at Boston Harbor." If you remember from the video earlier, there was something called the Boston Tea Party, and this painting depicts that scene where the colonists were actually dressed as Indians. That's what they called Native Americans back then. They were dressed as Indians, and they got onto these British ships and they dumped packages of tea into the harbor because they didn't want to have to pay a tax on them. And it was also considered to be sort of an act of aggression towards the British. Okay, this next picture or poster depicts the Battle of Lexington, which we also heard about in that short video earlier. You can see it's a battle between the British and the colonists, or now as they were called, the Patriots, or the Americans. And you can see different things happening in the front. You see the Americans fighting against the British, who are in the background. You might now think about some other questions that you have while looking at this picture. This document is called a broadside. It's another word for a flyer, and they would have posted this story around town in different places. And so this was one story. It says, "A circumstantial account of an attack that happened on the 19th of April, 1775, on His Majesty's troops by a number of the people of the province of Massachusetts Bay." And what that means is this is an account of an attack that happened to the British soldiers. That's what His Majesty's troops, they were the British soldiers. And it says by a number of people of the province of Massachusetts Bay, and that was one of the colonies turned America. So it was an attack of the British by the Americans. This next broadside, you will see the headline says, "Bloody Butchery of the British Troops of a Runaway Fight of the Regulars." And at the top you see some interesting shapes. Those are actually coffins that people are buried in. And you see that, and there's lots of type on there that is kind of hard to read, but the headline tells us that there was something done by the British troops to the Patriots or the Americans. And that's what this broadside or this flyer would be about. Finally, we have one of probably the most important documents in our country. This is the Declaration of Independence, and you'll see at the very top it says, "In Congress, July 4th, 1776, a declaration by the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled." In other words, this was the document that the colonists wrote up that actually created our country. This was their Declaration of Independence from England. You notice the date is July 4th, 1776. The reason that we celebrate our independence on July 4th is because this is the day they wrote this Declaration of Independence. So on that day when we celebrate with fireworks, it's actually celebrating this Declaration of Independence. And right next to the Declaration of Independence, you'll see a quote that is from that declaration. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I want you to think about that quote and imagine what that means to you today as much as it meant to the colonists or the Americans back then. Okay, our last poster is actually a picture of the men signing the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. And you can go ahead and take a look at that poster. Ask yourself any questions that you're wondering. Take a look at that.
Searching over the horizon, what can it be? The pilgrims sailed the sea to find a place to call their own. In their ship they flew out to find a better home. They finally knocked on Plymouth Rock, and someone said, "We're there." It may not look like home, but at this point I don't care. Oh, they were missing Mother England. They swore their loyalty until the very end. Anything you say, King, it's okay, King. You know it's kinda scary on your own. Gonna build a new land, the way we planned. But it helps us run it till it's grown. They planted corn, you know, they built their houses one by one. And bit by bit they worked until the colonies were done. They looked around, yeah, up and down, and someone said, "Hooray! If the people don't see us now, we would be proud of us today." They knew that now they'd run their own land. But George III still vowed he'd rule them to the end. Anything I say, do it my way now. Anything I say, do it my way. Don't you get to feeling independent, 'cause I'm gonna force you to obey. He taxed their property, he didn't give them any choice. And back in England, didn't give them any voice. That's called taxation without representation, and it's not fair. But when the colonies complained, the king said, "I don't care." He even has the nerve to tax our cup of tea. To put it kindly, King, we really don't agree. Gonna show you how we feel. We're gonna dump this tea and turn this harbor into the biggest cup of tea in history. they wanted no more mothering hand. They knew the time had come for them to take command. It's very clear you're being unfair, King, no matter what you say, we won't obey. Gonna hold a revolution now, King, and we're gonna run it all away with no more King.
We're gonna elect a president.
No more King.
He's gonna do what the people want.
No more King.
We're gonna run things our way.
No more King.
Nobody's gonna tell us what to do.
Rocking our position, splashing over the horizon. What can it be? Looks like it's going to be
A free country.